America's newest fighter plane, the P-47 Thunderbolt, has left the drafting boards and is now in mass production. A four-blade propeller absorbs the terrific power of its motor. Thousands of rounds of ammunition are stored in its wings. Guns are tested on the ground. Wheels begin to fold almost before they leave the runway. Like flying bullets, they streak across the sky. Thunderbolts in name, they pack thunderbolts of firepower.
My name is Charles Osborne. I live in Laurel Springs, New Jersey. I've lived here. I was born in Laurel Springs. I enlisted in the Army Air Corps Cadets in 1943, and I went through many training missions. I learned how to fly. I had 160 hours of training before they sent me overseas. And in one of the places that I learned to fly the P-47 Thunderbolt, a single-engine fighter, was down at Camp Springs, Maryland, which is now Army Andrews Air Force Base. Following my time at learning how to fly the P-47, they sent me to Millville, New Jersey for aerial gunnery training, and we learned to fly at a pulled target, somewhat like along the beach where you see planes pulling advertisements. They pulled a target that we would fire at, and learn how you had to lead a moving target. That was the whole purpose of it. We did that, and then we was sent overseas, and they shipped us over to across the North Atlantic Ocean in the middle of November of 1944, and it was a 52-ship convoy, and it was this long ride over there to England. The poor fellows that were in the bottom of the ship were sick all the way. I never had any problem with that. But I landed in England, and I was in a town called Stone, and we were there. They were sending us to our final destination in our squadron and our group, but for times they had changed times and things like that. I spent 5 weeks in England, and then they were giving me orders. I went over through Paris, and finally from Paris I went up to my squadron in Belgium. I joined the outfit right about the beginning of the year of 1945.
And how old were you?
I was 20 years old.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about your P-47 aircraft?
Oh yes, the P-47 was a great, absolutely wonderful airplane. It had a turbo supercharger. It was designed to fly high altitude escort for the bombers, but it did not have the capability of flying all the way to the target with the bombers, and that was when the P-51 Mustang came along, and that was able to fly the distance. But the P-47 was a wonderful ship. It was so well armored and protective of the pilot, and it was a great ship. As I say, it was designed for high altitude escort. We used it for low altitude dive bombing and strafing, and it was an absolutely fantastic ship, and I probably owe my life to the ship. We had 8 50 caliber machine guns, 4 in each wing, and each gun had about 1,275 cartridges for each 8 guns. And we also carried a 500-pound bomb under the belly and a 260-pound bomb under each wing. And we did, our job was to give close support to the infantry down below. We would fly in at about 8,000 feet, pick out our target. We knew where it was in most cases, and we would peel off one by one. We flew in a squadron of 12 ships. The flight leader would peel off and go down, and one by one we would peel off and dive down to around 1,500 feet, and we would release our bombs at that point. And we'd be firing our guns at the same time. And the Germans did not like our plane too much because we did an awful lot of damage with what we were flying. Our targets were mainly gun emplacements, tanks, many different kinds of things, but each mission was different. We normally would fly 300 to 400 miles at the most on our mission. And as far as the amount of fuel, I didn't have anything to do with that. All I know is it was filled up by the crew chief and the ground crew members, but we could fly usually a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours. Our missions were normally within 2 or 3 hours.
About how many miles would that be?
Oh, 300 or 400 miles at least. And we averaged to fly along at about 260, 280 miles an hour. But when we went down on a dive bomb, that plane built up some speed. We would hit probably 400 miles an hour dive bombing and then pull out. And it was interesting when you pulled out at that speed, you did a little bit of blackout. You'd lose a little bit. You were conscious, but you wouldn't see. And in maybe only 10 or 15 seconds, you'd pull out and, oh yeah, there's where I'm going. But the plane on my right is a PT-17 Stearman. This was the first plane we flew in training. It was a biplane, open cockpit biplane, and we would learn how to fly. There was an instructor that could fly in the rear and the student in the front.
And then where are you in the photograph? Are you in the photograph?
I am. I'm in the right, to me, in this right-hand side here. And this was shortly after I had soloed by myself, and that was one of my squadron buddies that flew along. We had 5 in the squadron, and he was one of my buddies that helped go with the training.
And what is the aircraft, the picture you're holding there?
This is the plane that eventually I flew, the P-47 Thunderbolt, single engine fighter, one person, that was all, no instructor, no anybody. It was a very tremendous ship to fly. When we flew combat missions, at the end of every month, we were given an allotment of alcohol. I was only a 20-year-old guy at this point, and we were given a bottle of scotch, a bottle of Pop-Heidsieck champagne, and some of the alcohol that was grown locally in France or Germany. And my squadron leader did not like champagne. He loved scotch. I didn't like scotch at all. I had just barely turned 21, and he would trade us a bottle of champagne for one of the bottles of scotch that I would give him. So I learned to drink champagne and liked it very much, and I would build up over the months a pretty good amount of champagne. So at the when we left, when the war in Germany ended at VE Day, we were eventually shipped home to the States from France and we were given a 30-day leave, and we had orders to return to an air base in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And the purpose of going there was to learn how to fly, get ready for the missions, the invasion of Japan. While I was on my 30-day leave, I was married. And when I was married on August 11th, 1945, and August 14th, the Japanese capitulated after the drop of 2 atomic bombs. And at that point, I was on a honeymoon in a hotel in Pennsylvania, Pocono Mountains, and all the bars were closed because of people were afraid that people would celebrate too much. I had carried 2 bottles of Piper Heights champagne home in my B-4 travel bag, and I had met, when we got there, we had met a Navy flyer, Navy ensign, and his wife were just married on the same day we were, and we celebrated by opening up these couple bottles of champagne and celebrating the end of the war in Japan.
This is the combat missions for Charles Ozzie Osborne.